I am very, very excited to interview my next guest, my first guest from Toronto, born and raised, father of three sons. I just found out age what, 11, 8, and 2. But not only that, sounds like a super dad, but professional speaker, not for profit creator, Brothers from Six, student character development. I'm sorry, I can't even speak because he is a champion Toastmaster, guy. So I'm a bit intimidated. He's the author of Brothers from Six, Role Models in My Community, but also Sisters from Six, right? Role models in my community, clothing, apparel, Inspire Legacy, Harvard certified. And I wanted to ask him specifically to speak about how parents handle moments where you want to just lose it because your child has pushed buttons and you want to lash out. But Jeff is going to show us an alternative way to either administer discipline or get our message across effectively without contact. I love, oh, and I also want to add that he is a police officer, right? So you have,
Yeah,
I just talked to him about his opinion on discipline, and it is very controversial because the old style is you listen or else you will be physically punished. And you just shared that words, right, have a larger impact. Thank you,
absolutely.
Jeff, so much. Please
Oh,
enlighten
Karen.
us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be speaking to you all the way from Toronto, talking to you all the way in Hawaii. This is fabulous. Like, technology is amazing.
Isn't it
Uh,
amazing?
it really is. Going back to what you just spoke about, if you think about, for those of you who are listening or watching, and you think about, if you were one of those children who were physically disciplined by your parents. I know I was, right? I got my spankings, at certain
Yep, me
times
too. Me
throughout my
too.
life. There you go. If you think about it, like for me, I can't remember the pain that the spanking actually gave. Now, I know at the time it was painful because I remember crying, but right now as an adult, I don't specifically remember the pain. But I do specifically remember words that were said by my parents, both positive and sometimes, unfortunately, negative. And, it shows you that words have a longer lasting effect than physical discipline. Now, of course, when you have a smaller child, I have a 2-year-old, as you just heard, and there's times that he is not listening, he's doing his thing. He's not going to fully comprehend when I speak to him in a certain manner. So there might be times that he might need a bit of a, slap on the bum or something like that. But, I'm talking specifically as your children get older. Oftentimes I think that when we are able to say certain words to them, it's more effective than actual spanking. And of
Mhm.
course, every child's going to be different. But I think as parents, if we can find ways to be creative with what we say and how we say it, then we're going to be more effective in the long run with their behavior, with the way they act when they're outside of the house, and then ultimately how they grow up and who they turn out to be. One of the things I speak about, and I shared it with you, Karen, is something I call the Clark Kent syndrome.
Mm.
So as parents, our children always look at us as Superman, as Superwoman, because that's what children do. If you think about when you were younger, you saw your parents, they were like the superstars in your eyes. That's all you knew. And we can't change that, and that's fine. But I think along our journey, we need to show our children the vulnerable side, the Clark Kent side. So if you recall, Superman was always brawny and big and strong and would, fight off all the bad guys. And that's the way our children will see us. However, Clark Kent was very timid. Clark Kent was very vulnerable. And I think it's important that we show our children that side as well. And I say that because I think it's something that's going to show them that we are humans, not just Superman or Superwoman, but we're actually human beings. And as they get older and understand, what life really is, they can now see, I saw that mom and dad had struggles in this area. I saw that they were able to, overcome this obstacle in their life. One of the things that I do with my children, specifically my older one, who's now 11, every time he turns another year older, I say to him, I've never parented an 11-year-old before. I've never parented a boy before at this age. So it's going to be new to me. And daddy's going to make some mistakes. Daddy's going to, probably have some errors. but I want you to know that it's new to me. And because it's new to me, I'm going to have mistakes, but understand that daddy loves you and I'm learning as I go along. I'm trying to be a better father every single day. And I hope you're trying to be a better son as well. And I say that because I want him to know that's the truth. Like, I've never parented a child that way, so I don't have all the answers. And so even when it comes to discipline, we're talking about, physical versus verbal. I'm not even saying that I have all the answers, but what I'm saying is that when we can communicate with our children, especially when they're older and they understand, when we can communicate with our children better, it has them understanding again that daddy's not that Superman who I think he is. I still love him, I still respect him, and I still think highly of my dad or my mom. But they're going to have an understanding of daddy's learning to navigate through life just like I am. And I think that's a commonality, a common ground that we as parents and children coming together can understand. And I believe that helps us as we go further in life, if that makes sense.
So can you talk about, right before we went on, you talked about actually owning it and apologizing after the outburst, because there will be outbursts, right? You lose your temper, you
Yeah.
say mean words, and you were saying what we could say to our child. Can you share that after, like you said, revisit and have that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So funny enough, you said that, the pandemic has been hard on a lot of people. And so for me, as a public speaker, a motivational speaker, last March, I had a ton of events that were planned out. I was supposed to be traveling all over the place, getting on a plane and doing a mini tour around Canada. And of course, just like everybody else, everything stopped, right? And so for me, a lot of frustration built up, a lot of, just kind of reassessing what was going on in the world. It pented up within me. And then here I have my kids who I love to death, but here are my kids who are home every single day, right?
24/7, yes.
24/7. I wake up and I hear noise. I go to sleep and I hear noise. And so, yeah, there was times that I lost my cool. There was times that I yelled and screamed. And when I reflect on it now, and that's the key, when you can reflect on it after the fact. When I reflect on it now, I could see that I was wrong. I should not have acted out that way. It wasn't them. It was me and my frustrations. And so in those circumstances, I went back to my kids and I apologized. And I told them, daddy, again, as I talked about earlier, daddy's not perfect. Daddy's going to make mistakes. I'm frustrated with where the world is now. I'm frustrated with what's going on. But just understand that it's not your fault. Your yelling and screaming is definitely adding to my frustration. However, at the end of the day, I'm sorry for acting out that way. And I want you to know that as your daddy, that's not who I am. But it was just something I was going through, and I do apologize. And again, going back to what I spoke about, I think it shows our children our vulnerability when we can apologize and show them that we made a mistake. So when they see that we made mistakes, then they know it's okay for me to make mistakes. As my daddy, who I look at as being Superman, or my mom as Superwoman, they made mistakes. And so because they did, then it's okay for me to make mistakes.
Can I ask what your kids' reactions were, like the 11-year-old? Because the other, actually,
Yeah.
the 8-year-old probably got it too. What was their
Yes.
reaction? Because they're probably looking at you. Well, they're used to you apologizing, I'm sure. But the average person, if the mom has never apologized before, a dad has never apologized before, they'll probably look at
Yes.
you, what? But I was just curious to know what your boys, how they responded.
So like you said, I've taken this approach for a long time now, even going back when my oldest one was the only one. I've had this approach of apologizing when I was wrong. And so, yes, they can understand it because they're like, okay, daddy, no big deal. But you're absolutely right. There are going to be some kids who are going to look at you strangely because you've never apologized.
Right.
But I think it's a part of us growing. It's a part of us being uncomfortable to get to the spot where we need to be. If we can push ourselves to be uncomfortable in there's certain moments, it's going to make a better relationship. So even if you've never apologized, like, I know a lot of parents who've never apologized. I don't know if my parents have ever apologized to me. And sometimes growing up, I wish they would. And so, I think if you are someone who's never apologized when you were wrong, when you do that, yes, the first or second time your kids are going to look at you like you're crazy. Like, are you okay? You taking alcohol? Are you like, what's going on?
Exactly.
But I believe it's going to lead to a better relationship because, again, you apologize. So now they know that they can make mistakes and they don't have to hide it from you. they can actually apologize and really be sorry for what they did because they saw you do it. And I think it comes down to just being that example for our children. You know, prior to your recording, we were talking about reading and stuff like that, and how it's important for parents to I think it's important for parents to read, to pick up a book and read, so their children can see it. We expect our children to go do their homework, but then we sit down and we flick the channel watching, you know, Housewives of fill in the blank, right? We sit there and watch whatever basketball game or hockey game or football game, and we expect our children to sit there and do their homework all night. But if your children see you pick up a book and read, then they're going to say, oh, okay. And it becomes normal to them. And so it goes back to the same thing of apologizing. If you can do something and your children see it, it becomes normal. So the first or second time you may get that strange look, but eventually your children are going to understand, yeah, mommy makes mistakes, daddy makes mistakes, but we're good because they apologize and they mean it. And so I'm able to apologize as well for the things I do that are wrong.
Do you think it paves the way for healthier relationships in the future, like when they meet someone, a future significant other, or bosses, coworkers? How does a parent impact their children's future communication
Yeah,
method?
absolutely. It will lead the way, because really we you know, I think we should all understand that a young girl, the first man she falls in love with is her father. A young boy, the first woman he falls in love with is his mother. And if his mother is that type of person who will never apologize, if his mother is the type of person who holds onto grudges, who is always angry and bitter, who has a bad relationship with her family, then how do we expect our children to know any better? And so perhaps now, because you don't apologize for things that you do, you are bitter, you are angry, you pass that on to your children, whether you know it or not. And as they get older, they go into their teens and their 20s and 30s, and they start having relationships, and they decide that they're not going to apologize for things that they have done because they've never learned that from you. And now they have a hard time in their relationships based on things that they learned from you or things they didn't learn from you. So I do really believe that, yes, the relationships that we have with our children, it does pave the way for further relationships, whether it be romantic relationships or relationships in jobs and business, socializing, whatever it might be. It really does start at home. And we do introduce them to that through the relationships we have with our children.
So what is your opinion? And it is how, you know, a lot of parents of millennials are complaining that they're entitled, they don't know how to respect, they can't keep jobs, they're lazy. I mean, not all of them, but what do you say to, you know, parents who are, you know, well, I don't know what I did wrong, but in essence, they don't want to say it, but the message is, you guys are losers because you don't have what we have, which is, in their eyes, we have the discipline, we have the perseverance, and we are willing to work hard, not just make money through being an influencer. Or, you know, you've heard those stories where parents are just shaking their heads. And then what do you say to because, you know, you're still parenting, right? When are you parenting an 11-year-old or a 36-year-old?
Yes, you are.
What kind of conversations do you think should take place without judgment? Because this is what we're trying to start, right? It's like a parenting revolution
Yeah,
when you think about it.
absolutely. Yeah, so I think it's kind of funny because just as you talked about, I've heard conversations about, look at these millennials, they're lazy,
Yeah,
they're always on social media, they're always blah, 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 blah. But I think to myself, the people who are complaining are the ones who raise these kids.
that's what I say, but I don't want to get prosecuted or
Right.
persecuted, because I think because I'm a you know, I'm a mother of an 18-year-old and a 24-year-old, so I experiment on them and I share. And of course they're, you know,
Yes.
they're think, because my older one will deactivate social media when she feels like, okay, it's getting to, I don't know, whether it hurts her or it just makes her feel like, wait a minute, it's not healthy, you know. But now you're having adults also, right? They pick up their phone first thing in the morning, they're checking Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I mean, seeing what celebrities posted or what the
Yes.
politicians are posting. And but then yet we are I love that. So can you follow that train of thought? Where is it parents having to be accountable, or how do we share the message so that we're not pointing fingers?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of two things. I think it is parents being accountable because, again, if you do have teenagers who are acting out in this way, these teenagers were raised in your home. And so these 20-year-olds were raised in your home. And so, I don't want to point the fingers and to say, everything is your fault, because it's not, because we know that there's outside influences, especially social media. It's a huge influence on everyone's life, not just children.
Mm-hmm.
But, we want to be able to raise our children with a certain standard, morals and values that we want them to take with them throughout their lives. Now, considering this as well, when we were growing up, our lives were obviously different. Social media, depending on how old you are, social media was probably not around the way it is now. However, there's a good chance your parents complained about you, if you really think about it, right?
Right.
Your parents' probably complained about them.
Right.
So it really just becomes a trend of, my goodness, look at this next generation. They are insane, right? And there's a good chance the children now, when they have children, they will complain about
It'll
them.
repeat, right?
It
Your
repeats
music
itself.
is not as good as mine. Your
Absolutely.
fill in the blank was not as good as when I was growing up.
Absolutely. And if I can pat myself on the back a little bit, I think I came out okay, right? The fact that, Karen, you have this
way
platform.
more than okay.
Thank you very much, Karen. I don't know your upbringing, but you have this platform. Like, you are doing amazing things. And so I think that sometimes we have to have a little bit more patience with this next generation that's coming up. We see things that we don't like, and I get it. I understand it. Spending a lot of time on social media, doing things that, we as a generation think is a waste of time. However, again, I think that our parents thought that with us with certain things as well. I think if we can be patient and still continue to give them the guidance that they need to have, and understand, you might give it to them every single day and they're going to take bits and pieces of it, but they are taking it. They are accepting that information. And eventually, as they become older and they start to form their own independent lives, I believe you're going to start seeing the values and the structure you put into their lives. It's going to be there. It's going to look different because we're not in 1980s or 1970s. We are in 2021. And so it's going to look different with the outside influences coupled with what you've given them, the values, but the values are going to be there, provided you continue to give it to them as they are growing up. And so, are they playing a lot of video games? Probably. Are they on social media too much? Probably. However, when you're continuing to give them the values that they need, I think you're going to see it show itself. It's going to flourish. You may not see it a lot now, but as they become independent, they get those jobs, they start to work, they start to create their own relationships and families. Everything you've instilled in them is still there. It just starts to come out in different times of their lives. So I would say just continue to pour into your children, continue to love them the way they need to be loved. Again, they're playing a lot of video games, talk to them about that if need be, but at the end of the day, continue to give them the values that you want them to have, and it's going to show itself, and they're going to pass that on, your values, to their children as well.
So my new thing is nurturing rather than nagging. But I think as a mom, It's almost like a default thing. I don't want to nag. And then all of a sudden you want to give a little uplifting advice. And my daughters always say, then you turn it into a life lesson. Des is like, say it in 5 minutes, not 20 minutes. But I think we have the right intentions, but maybe I've been trying to tell moms to just trust in their child's journey. And it sounds like you're saying, they might not get it now. They might not even get it next year, but they will get it. But I love the way that you said, not in the way that we think they're going to get it. It might come out differently, right?
Yeah, a friend of mine always says, are you parenting your child for 2022 or 2032? Meaning that life is going to be different 10 years from now, right? 11 years from now, 20 years from now, life is going to be different. And if we're trying to mold our children into the year that we are in now, then they'll never be prepared for 10 years from now. So I think we as parents have to try to be open thinking. So for example, my grandmother is 94. If I told my grandmother that I'm opening an online business, she'd probably think I am bananas, right? She's never been online a day in her life, right? She doesn't understand it, right? There's going to be things like, I know where our minds are blown right now because here we are, we're speaking live. And again,
and you're in Toronto, I'm in Hawaii.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's a mind blown, but guess what? What's this going to look like in 10 years? Like, can I actually reach out and actually touch you? Can we actually high five?
I'll be like, hey, wait a minute. Did you put deodorant on, Jeff?
Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. Oh,
We're going to do it.
Smell it.
All
Absolutely.
senses.
Yeah, absolutely. We just don't know. And so again, if we are preparing our children for the world that we're in today, then we're already out of date. We're already out of date because things are moving faster. Technology has expanded faster in the last 5 years than it has in 50 years. And so saying that, of course, we can't predict the future. We don't know what things are going to look like. But I think if we are open-minded to where the world is going and help to guide our children down that path as well, I think it makes it easier. So what I'm talking about here is, growing up, we've always had this structure of you go to college, you go to university, you get it done, then you get that job. But it's very clear the way things are now, especially with the pandemic. There are people who are living here in Canada who are working at jobs in China because they're sitting on their couch and they can do so, right? We couldn't do that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but it's happening now. You can apply for a job in Germany and get it and not leave your couch in the US, but you're still working for this German job.
Yeah.
And so this is where we are going. So again, does it mean that your children should not go to university? No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is the rigid way of thinking that we've always had, you have to get your degree, then you have to work that job for 30 years. There are children who are making, crazy amount of money doing online products or online YouTube videos or whatever. It really is a viable way of living now. That's where we are. And it's going to blow up even more over the next 10, 20, 15 years, 50 years. And so I think we have to be open to where the world is going and then have the patience to understand that our children are going to be a part of that world because they're growing up with it. A lot of people didn't grow up with technology. We learned it along the way. These children were born with a soother in their mouth in one hand and a phone in the other, right?
Yes.
That's where we are. And so understanding because the world is going that way, then I think we have to be more open to where the world is going and have the patience to know that our children are a part of that world. And so, yeah, think about, raising our children not for 2021 or 2022, but raising them for 2031 or 2032.
Wow, I like that. And maybe I like when you said to just be willing to face feeling uncomfortable, because when you don't know it,
Yes.
and then it also is you want to another mom just said, I don't want to let them leave the safety bubble. And when you are allowing them to break that tradition of, a lot of the parents, I'm a tutor, so you do got to get a scholarship because we can't afford it. Tremendous stress on a child. You do need to go to the right college and think about what you want to do. Oh, you know what? No, you're going to be an engineer or a doctor or an attorney because, and the child has no choice in pursuing. They don't even think about what I asked an 18-year-old, is that being an engineer, is that what you want or what your dad wants? And he said, I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
And I just said, well, I know it doesn't make sense now. And the dad, he's an only child. Mom is from both local, but mom is from China, and very, when you're the only son and an only child, there's a lot of pressure. Yes. And I'm not saying just because of the culture. I think no matter who you are, if you have one child, yes. There is a lot of pressure. So so he says, can you talk to my dad about the grades not mattering? And I said, I can't. I said, it's not going to work. I said, it's not, I can't change your dad's thinking, but my goal is to teach kids not to stress out about the grades because it is consuming their mental health. And how is it in Canada? I mean, kids are suffering from sleeplessness, depression, anxiety. We have increased suicide rates. It's a serious issue where our parenting, and I'm not saying, I'm not pointing fingers, but our parenting needs to change because we're putting so much stress on these little brains that aren't even fully developed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it is the same in Canada as well, and probably in most places around the world, that parents really just want to see the best for their child. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all want to see the best. I want to see the best for my children, of course.
Right.
But we have to remember that we have lived our lives as parents, and we're continuing to live our life, but they have a life to live as well. And so they are going to make mistakes. They are going to fall down. And that's a part of life. That's a part of growing. Because if you're always cuddling them and making sure that, you're pushing off all the issues and the mountains they have to climb, then when they do get to a certain age, they're not going to know how to fight. It reminds me of a caterpillar who has turned into a butterfly and is trying to fight its way out of that cocoon. If you were to cut that cocoon open to let that butterfly out, it's going to fall to the ground and it's going to die. Because that butterfly, what it needs is to fight against that cocoon. It needs to fight against it so it can build up its wings. It can build up its strength. So when it does come out of the cocoon, it's strong enough to survive. And when we are continuing just to coddle our kids and to hide them from the pressures of life, that when they do go out there and they're expected to fly, they're going to fall to the ground. And so we have to allow that room for them to grow, for them to expand their wings. And you talked about, academics, and parents are huge on making sure your marks are top, to the top level, and, get the A's and all that good stuff. I heard this just the other day. Someone said, if you look at a lion is the king of the jungle. But why is it the king of the jungle? A lion is not the fastest animal in the jungle. The lion is not the smartest in the jungle. The lion is not the strongest. But what it is, it's the mindset of the lion. That's what makes it the king of the jungle. It's the mindset. And so it's not about your grades and how good your grades are. It's not about the family you come from and how wealthy they are. It's the mindset. Where is the mindset of our children? Where is our mindset? Because that's what makes the lion the king of the jungle. We can be the same when we have the right mindset going forward. And when our mindset is only about grades, if you're not getting A's, then nothing else is good enough. If we have that type of mindset, then we're telling our children that A's are the only determination of how good you are. And we know that's not true. There's so many millionaires and billionaires in this world who have never gone off to post-secondary education. Right? But they're smart enough to have the mindset to know, listen, I'm not good at accounting, so let me hire the best accountants to take care of that stuff with my business. Right? They have the mindset to do the right thing. So again, if we are judging our children by the A's and B's that they get, they are bigger than just those marks, right? We know that teaching is about, I'm going to feed you some information, and then you feed it back to me on a test. And based on how good you feed it back to me will determine your mark.
Exactly. You might have test anxiety. You might just choose not to study because you're worried about the pandemic, or you're worried about, whatever it is.
Right.
So
right.
in closing, you know what? I just realized who needs to learn how to change their mindset are special ed children. I'm a former special ed teacher. And so a lot of these parents who have maybe a 12-year-old reading at a first grade level, or you have a 17-year-old who is barely, way below grade level. What message can you share regarding the importance, I love that, mindset versus, not being grade level? I mean, is it really necessary? My job is to help them, get to that grade level, but you might always operate at a third grade level. Maybe that's the best that you can do, but teaching the parents not to see that as a future failure. Like, oh my gosh, he's only at a second grade level. He's doomed to not succeed in life.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that thinking because oftentimes society tells us that's the thinking we should have. But if you decide to think out of the box and just do a little research, do a Google search, and you can Google and find out how many people out there, let's say, business owners, how many celebrities, and I use celebrities because everybody knows who celebrities are, but they're not necessarily the line, so to speak, of success. But if you can Google some of these people and you can say, how many of them have a disorder? You're going to see a long list come up. How many people did not graduate from college? And you're going to see a long list come up. And these are people that you and I deem as successful. We watch their movies, we listen to their music, we buy their products, and we don't think twice about what their schooling was. But our children were all over them if they get a B and not an A.
Right.
And so it's important for us to take a different look, shift our perspective to understand that, again, we can't just judge them specifically by those A's or B's. There's other ways to judge our children or to help to mold them into the person they're supposed to be. So, for example, growing up, I've always wanted to learn about stock investment, but I didn't know how. It just seemed like an old guy thing. Like I didn't know what to do, right? So I left it alone for years, but then I finally started to look into it some more. I'm like, I need to learn this stuff. Like I need to start to build up my wealth. And so it's been maybe 6 years, 7 years. It's not that long ago that someone taught me a little bit, and then I read a book and I took a course, and now I'm deep into investing into stocks. Now, saying that, because my children now at 11 and 8 years old now, he just turned 8, because of the age they're at now, I know our school system doesn't teach about personal finances. So it's my job to teach them that. So although my sons may get an A or B or C in a certain class, it's my job to teach them something else the school system's not teaching them. So my children at 11 and 8 years old, they understand the stock market. They understand what a bull market is, what a bear market is. They understand the PE ratio. They understand dividends. They understand this stuff because I taught it to them. So so what if they get a A or a D in geography? Provided that they're trying, and they're trying as hard as they can, I'm happy with that. Because at the end of the day, there's other things that they can learn that's going to help them to be successful financially, in a relationship, communication wise. There's things that we can look at to help them to be successful that is not being taught in the school system. So
When
I'm
I
not going
always
to get
thought
caught up
that,
in the A's and
yeah,
B's.
and I mean, don't you think a lot of education is non-academic? I mean, when you just say mindset alone, that schools don't teach them how to create that healthy mindset. And we always, you know how there's a lot of flack on the distance learning. We didn't like the
Yes,
education system prior to the pandemic. Education, just like the
correct.
parenting, complaining to kids. Don't you think we've always been dissatisfied, with the education system?
Well, that's a funny thing. I know that I have been. So how can I be so hard on my kids based on the grades that they're getting when I know the system really doesn't work as well as it should? And I think, again, if we consider it that way, then again, it's not necessarily about the A's and B's. It's about life experience. If you take your child on a trip, if you can afford to take your child on a trip, your child will learn more than they'll probably learn throughout the entire school year. It doesn't even have to be an expensive trip. Take a road trip 3 or 4 hours away from your home. Your child can learn more on that road trip than anything they've learned in school. And so, I don't want to dog, formal education. I think
No,
it's
no, no.
important. I
Right.
think it's important, but let's not judge our kids solely on that. There's a saying, and I know I'm going to butcher it, but it says, if you judge a fish the way it climbs a tree, it will always fail. Right?
Ooh.
A fish is a great swimmer, but it can never climb a tree. So let's not judge our kids solely on the A's and B's in class. Let's look at the totality of what life offers, give them lessons in all different areas: finances, communication, learning about people, understanding people, benevolence. There's so many ways that things that we can show our children, and give them the overall understanding of what life is like, not just about what did you get in calculus. It's
I
important for
love
them to
that.
learn everything.
And that's what we are empowered to do. Then you're saying that parents have the power through vulnerability, through sharing, communicating, and educating them, probably just by role modeling, right? Role modeling what we would like them to be.
Be what you want your children to be. Be what you want your children to be. Don't tell them to go off and do their homework and you put your feet up. Well, I've had a long day at work, I'm going to watch Housewives or whatever. You have to be what you want your children to be. So that means that watch your Housewives if that's what relaxes you, but at some point in time, even if it's on a Saturday or Sunday, pick up a book and have a family reading hour.
Oh, I
Right?
love
Do
that
something that your
family reading
children can.
hour.
Absolutely, because you're going to open their minds. You're going to open your own mind. You're going to learn new things. They're going to learn new things. You can have a conversation, and that alone helps to build up the communication between you and your child.
And it
Right?
doesn't
So
have to
there's
be long, right? It does not even have to be long because everyone's busy. Just that,
absolutely,
short. I mean, I do these memory focusing thing, just 5 minutes of either deep breathing or memory game or something. It's amazing how, and their eyes light up because it's not about boring, algebra
yes,
or
yes,
biology. And I think if you make it fun, plus it's a family thing. So is that what you do?
yes.
Do you make time to, I mean, you're busy, plus you have 3 kids. Do you just schedule it? Because we had a family meeting and then I just realized 2 months go by and my daughter's like, wait a minute, I thought we were just going to have these family meetings. I'm like, you know what? We have to put it on the calendar or months will
Yes.
go by. Do you incorporate it
Yes.
in your calendar so it's it's going to
I
happen?
do. Yes, we have family meetings on Sunday at dinner time. And so we always sit around the table and we talk. And the question, we always have a family meeting, so the floor is open. Anybody could speak about their week and anything that went down, and anything they want to get off their chest. And then we also speak about, the question I always ask them is, how did you change the world this week?
Wow.
I ask them that question because I want them to start to think on how they can change the world. And when I tell them, and I'm telling you as well as the listeners, as people who are watching, it's not about changing the world as in I'm going to become the next president, or I'm going to become the next, CEO. If you could do that, go ahead. But when I'm talking about changing the world, I'm talking about from the smallest things. Like you're at that coffee shop and you decide to buy a coffee for the person behind you. You decide to open the door for someone. You decide to have a conversation with a stranger that you've never met, and you perhaps can learn something. It's the smallest things, because when you can change your world, it helps to change the world. And so I ask my children, as
Wow.
young as they are, what did you do this week to change the world? And it has them thinking. So now when they go back to school this week, they're like, okay, well, I know daddy's going to ask me that question, so I need to come up with something. Okay, well, let me see if I can help that kid out. That kid over there is crying. Let me see if I can go and find out what's going on. And now they start to think, how can I be a difference in someone's life?
Wow. Can you share in closing what's one thing maybe that one of your sons shared about how they changed the world that week?
Yeah, I had my 8-year-old come in, and one day he said, there was a kid that was brand new in class, and you could tell that this kid was shy and they didn't really want to be there. And, they started to tear up. And he said he went over to them and said, hey, he introduced himself, said his name, asked them their name, and said, everything's going to be okay. And he kind of walked them over to the books and, is there a book you want to
Oh,
read? And so this is the type of thinking that he has, because this is the questioning that we come up with, me and my wife, to ask these children. And so that's just one of the things that I've heard over the last while. Again, it just shows the kindness that can come out when someone is actually looking to make change in this world.
right. Oh, I love that. Kindness. It's like practicing
Yeah.
daily kindness, not just your to-do list.
Yes, yes. And not just during Christmas time when everybody's trying to be
Yeah.
nice, but being kind every day.
Wow, Jeff, this was very, very enlightening. I love everything that you shared. I think it'll make a big impact on just parenting, just the way
Oh,
that you
thank you.
think, the way that you interact with children. And I mean, keep doing what you're doing. I love it. Can you, because so it's, I love your background. So award-winning
Yes.
public
Award.
speaker, author,
Yes.
coach. I love that. Can you just share how people can reach you and share where they can find your book? Because I saw it on Amazon, but can you share the titles again and where they can find you?
Yeah, so real quick, my I do have 2 books. As you spoke about, the first one is Brothers from the Six, Sisters from the Six, Role Models in My Community. You can tell it's a double book there. And the whole idea is just to inspire our young children, to show them that you don't have to just be the next LeBron James. There's doctors and lawyers and judges and veterinarians that you can strive to be like, if not better than. And then my second book is called New Me, 10 men, 10 stories of perseverance. Myself and 9 other guys, so 10 of us in total, came together and we all wrote a chapter about something in our lives where we fell down, where we had problems, but how we were able to get back up. And I think it's so important that we share how we get back up in our lives when we're going through things, so we can help somebody else who might be going through it as well. And yeah, anyone who's interested, please hit me up. I'm on social media, Jeff A.D. Martin, or just Google me, Jeff A.D. Martin. I will pop up. And I would love to have deeper conversations with anybody who's interested.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, so much. Enjoy your Friday. I really appreciate you taking the time out to share. And
Thank you,
one
Karen.
day when Canada opens, I will travel to Toronto.
And
And you
likewise,
come to
I'm coming
Hawaii.
to Hawaii. Absolutely. We're coming. We're going to have some fun. We're going to connect and, have a good old time. So
Sounds
again, I'm so
good.
appreciative. Thank you so much. And let's build. Let's see this grow.
Definitely. Thank you. Okay, take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.